Oh.
Hello Gladys.
Hello, Jones.
Everyone out there in internet world. Tonight, welcome to Wednesday Words, open mic poetry night here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. We wish to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this country, the Banbai and country throughout Australia, and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to the people, the cultures and the elders, past, present and emerging. And tonight, I'm going to start with a very old poem here by a woman called Lindsay Duncan, Mrs. T.C. Cloud of Wallaroo Bay in South Australia. And these were published in the late 17th century, 19th century. So this one is called Hush. The long waves murmur on the lonely shore, chanting that ancient rhythmic slumber song which with they lulled the infant world of yore and soothed it ceaselessly the ages long. Their tuneful monotone soft solace speaks to weary hearts and overburdened hands. Do you not hear it? And the ripple breaks in silver foam upon golden sands. Hush. Inland the titlark mounts the lucid air and faintly quivers forth a fitful strain, while distant crickets the low music share, and millions censored wattles on the plain. Their subtle balmy fragrance freezily pour upon the open bosom of the breeze, and that bears it to us on the whispering shore, and seems to murmur with the murmuring seas. Hush. Oh, is the world so precious to your heart that you can spare no hour to linger here? Do you love the crowded, noisy mart, that you would have its tumult always near? Come slip for once the trammels of the town, leave greed and scorn and bitterness behind. Fling all your cumbrous load of trouble down and listen to the wavelets and the wind. Hush. Hush. The sun dips in the western sea, and in the fading light the stillness grows. The earth is wrapped in tender mystery. All nature lies in one sublime repose. A happy sadness fills the soul at rest. Perchance in painless tears its utterance seeks, for mingling love and wonder have confessed 'tis God's own voice that through the silence speaks. Hush. That's it. Yeah. Mrs. T.C. Cloud. This is from New Language, an anthology of Australian verse compiled by Judith Wright in 1957.
Oh.
So we're going to go, first of all, number 6, page 6. The Wiradjuri tribe, which I lost. Here, Wiradjuri tribe by Mary Gilmore. Harried we were and spent, broken and falling, ere as the cranes we went, crying and calling. Summer shall see the bird backward returning, never shall there be heard those who went yearning. Emptied of us the land, ghostly our going, fallen like spears the hand dropped in the throwing. We are the lost who went like the cranes crying, hunted and lonely, spent, broken and dying. And that was by Mary Gilmore, the Wiradjuri tribe.
Oh.
Next one here. It's my third female poet in a row.
Yes.
Haven't done any male ones yet, so this is by Ethel Anderson and it's called Flood. Australia's a land of floods, yeah. From thick clouds over the black Warrumbungles and racked far travelling tambourine mountains, red earth juggyongs, steep Picton razorbacks, rock-pierced ice-weathered, snow-tossed Kosciuszko, autumnal sharp rains inundate the paddocks. Infect with mildew and silk-tasseled maize cobs, hurt more than 7 years drought the pastures, defile with seepage the clay-panned waterholes, soon sluice down contours of the unsown fallows. Silt soon up creeks with alluvial wastage. The water hyacinth, treacherous, beautiful, mauve and merciless foe of fishermen, the creeping Judas of soaks and billabongs, chokes up the channels its tough sedans, stolons, increased by prolific multiplication, eroded then the bluff, shevelled banks of Logan, Lachlan, Blue Hunter, or swift-flowing Murray, denudative of oaks and grey eucalyptus, feathery, sour-sapped, bent-bowed melaleucas, cave in, let, spread the loud, snarling floodwaters. Interesting. All right, I'm going to do a couple more here. This is Starry Dreamtime Night by Esther Gardner of Tingha.
Yes.
She was born in Tingha to her parents Jock and Maud Gardner. She's the youngest in her family with 3 sisters. She attended Tingha Public School and then McIntyre High School in Inverell, the University of Armidale, New England in Armidale, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree. And these are from her book, Starry Dreamtime Night, My Aboriginal Poems. And the 2 I'm reading are My Mum and My Dad, dedicated to her mother and father, Jock Gardner and Maud Gardner.
Oh.
My dad. Many years have passed from when I held your hand and the family lived on Hospital Road, Flat Road, Tingha, in the Department of Housing House. The years have faded and as time has moved on, but within my heart there will always be a special place my dad belongs. I know you're in heaven now, standing beside our Heavenly Father's side, waiting patiently for the day where the Gardner family will unite. But time will move on, and each day will fade away, but the memory and love for my beautiful dad for an eternity in my heart will remain. And now, My Mum by Esther Gardner. A beautiful angel sent from heaven above is my beautiful mum. She's a sparkling rose that shines with colours so bright, or a twinkling star to watch over me at night. Her laughter is heard blowing in the breeze, and at night time she prays for a family in God she believes. With love and tenderness she shines so bright, she is special to me, and our love for each other intertwines. A beautiful angel sent from heaven above is my beautiful mum. And moving on to this book, Under One Sky, edited by June Perkins, Pam Galliano and Tara Webster for the Licuala Writers. Okay, and this is Mission Beach Walk by June Perkins. We watch clouds with halos of light behind them cross a burnt orange background, turning pink then grey. When the light fades, we see a seahorse disguised as a cloud swim in the oceans of the sky. We glimpse memories move like clouds, light and airy Cyrus becoming dark, nimbostratus. They form circles, black holes, pulling us through to a dreaming place. In that place, I remember and share Kiribati, a rocking boat in a storm, wondering if I will ever return, reaching the small island to talk with Winnie the elder, cross-legged in an open bark house, no phone to ring home, only a CB radio, missing them, my family. At my trip's end, a Kiribati lady grabs my hand as the truck pulls away, says in carefully learned English, never forget us, and if we will never meet again except in dreaming space. She calls even now beyond the ocean end, creating remembrances light. My children share their dream that we will one day swim with the dugong and turtles. All right. Now I'm going to move on to some male poets. And before I do that, I'm going to do one non-Australian poet, Lewis Carroll. And this is the Jabberwocky from Through the Looking Glass. Have you ever? Do you know this one? You might have heard it before. I've done it before.
Oh, have you?
I've done it many times, but
Not to worry.
I love it. It's a funny one. It's kind of strange because it uses unusual words, and you've got to kind of guess what it means. 'Twas brillig, and the slimy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch, beware the jub bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time Maxome foe he sought, so rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left its dead, and with its head he went galumping back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. He chortled, oh fabulous day, Calloo Calais. He chortled with his joy. It was brilliant, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the way, all mimsy with the borogoves, and the gnome raths outgabe.
Wow.
What an interesting one, eh? Yeah. It helps, like, if you know it well, and you can add those
Yeah, exactly.
those actions to
Yeah,
it,
those
it
actions,
makes a lot more
Yeah,
sense.
makes a lot, yep.
Yeah, but otherwise, the first time I read through that, I was like, what does this mean? Yeah, I wrote it out, and I read through it, and yeah, I really like that one. That's a real classic of Lewis Carroll. Now, I've got Outback Poems by Philip Rush. Now, Philip Rush is one of Australia's most prolific and best-selling poets of recent times, and this is from his 9th book of poetry, Outback Poems, and this was published in first published in 2002. This is a reprint in 2013, and he's got over, I don't know, 15 15 books here now that he's published, and probably more since this was out. So yeah, he was a country school teacher for over 40 years, and he draws a lot of life experiences to bring to Australia's outback. So yeah, and I've chosen just one of his poems here tonight, and it is called The Spirit of Matilda.
Oh.
And it's, I'll read you the introduction. It's the second of only two poems in this book which have been previously published, and it was written on request some years ago, and it expresses his thoughts about waltzing Matilda. I'll just read the poem, I'll get on with it. And it's about, a swagman. He may have been a vagabond, a rogue, or petty thief, and may have worked occasionally by way of light relief. But Banjo's famous swaggy is an Aussie figure grand, the quintessential battler of our great and wondrous land. A man content with life he was, of independent bent, who managed peacefully alone no matter where he went. He cooked and ate a simple fare, he drank his billy's brew, and if a jumbuck chanced along, he'd have a bit of stew. He dressed for comfort more or less. He was no stylish fop. He had no permanent address. At night he'd simply stop beside a creek or billabong, his swag beneath his head, or during rain and thunderstorms he'd camp inside a shed. He kept his distance from the law, he wanted no dispute, and rarely acted in a way that might bring ill repute. He'd known the ups and downs of life and never took a poke at other chaps' misfortunes. He was a gentle bloke. When trouble did confront him at peace beneath a tree, he felt condemned unfairly by each of troopers three. He sprang into the water, within moments he was gone, but the spirit of Matilda eternally lives on. A ghost of Banjo's swaggy has called from down the years, awakening the spirit that was in our pioneers. Although we're mostly city-bred, we're Aussies through and through, and like to think that we ourselves are independent too. We dream of days departed, of life upon the track. We yearn for simple solitude somewhere way out back. We hear from distant memories the bush's haunting call, for the spirit of Matilda is deep within us all.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, Philip R. Rush from Australian Outback Poems.
Oh, yeah, Outback stuff, very good.
Yeah. And on to that, I got one of Banjo Patterson's tonight. And this is The Animals That Noah from the book The Animals That Noah Forgot, illustrated by Norman Lindsay. And probably one that most people don't know, because a lot of people know Banjo's really common stuff like Waltzing Matilda, Man from Snowy River, Clancy of the Overflow, Mog Bill's Bicycle, maybe they know Bush Christening, or the G-Bung Polo Club. You might have heard me recite it. But this is Frogs in Chorus. The chorus frogs in the big lagoon would sing their songs to the silvery moon. Tenor singers were out of place, for every frog was double bass. But never a human chorus yet could beat the accurate time they set. The solo singer began with a joke. He sang, "As long as I live, I'll croak, croak, I'll croak." And the chorus followed him, croak, croak, croak. The poet frog in his plaintive tones sang of sorrow was all on his own. How shall I win my heart's desire? How shall I feed my spirit's fire? And the solo frog in his deepest croak, to fire your spirit, he sang, eat coke, coke, eat coke. And the chorus followed him, coke, coke, coke. The green frog sat in a swampy spot, and he sang the song of he knew not what. The world is rotten, O cursed spite, that I am the frog that must set it right. How shall I scatter the shades that lurk? And the old man bullfrog sang, get work, work, get work. And the chorus followed him, work, work, work. The soaring spirits that rain would fly on wings of hope to the starry sky must face the snarls of jealous dogs, for the world is ruled by its chorus frogs. Yeah, good old banjo.
Yes, I'll be your cat and his.
We've got one more here. Oh, well, a few more. This is by a book, Whoop Whoop and Other Verses, Australian Bush Verse. So, yeah, one of the things about Australian Bush Verse, it's poetry. It's metered and rhyming. So not all poetry is metered and rhyming, but this stuff is. This one's called Lucky by Hunter Kilner, written on the 28th of February 2001. Yeah, mate, my name is Lucky. I've always been blessed with good luck. This morning I just dodged a truckie who killed a young bloke with his truck. If that truck had been 10 seconds early, that victim could well have been me. When I stopped to say good day to Curly, this bloke dies where I'm supposed to be. Then I called on my fiance's mother. I was trembling and shaking like hell when one thing led to another, but my luck just stuck again just as well. And someone threw a brick in the window and it hit me right hard on the rump, left a big bruise on my buttock. Look here, you can still see the lump. What's lucky about a thump on the bum by a bloody great brick then, I said. If he'd thrown it 10 seconds earlier, chum, 'twould have got me square on the head. Lucky. A Deaf Man by Hunter Kilner. Upon a seat within a park, a wasted old man sat. He chewed a piece of willow bark and fiddled with his hat. Happy to watch the passers-by, he was contented there, just gazing at the azure sky and breathing in the air. A lively lad was playing nigh. He jumped and skipped and ran, then settled down, and by he scrutinised the man. It's no use talking to me, son, for I'm stone deaf, my chum. I'm not talking, said the younger one. I'm chewing bubble gum. Yeah, exactly. All right, we got. Oh, yeah. Before I go on to Whoop Whoop, I'm going to do one about Newsom, who's quite a famous Australian poet. He's not with us anymore, as far as I'm aware. On the tracks near Augathella, through monotonous terrain, lay a fearsome-looking fella on the pathway of a train. His name was Colin Newsom, a shearer and scallywag. The scene would have been more gruesome had the grid not caught his swag. He had the markings of a scholar until they sent him off to war, but it seems he slipped the collar and escaped through East Timor. He slipped again right through the fingers and escaped from Darwin town, joined drovers at Currawinga, rode with them to Allroy Downs. When he departed as a drover from the aggressive outback spreads, he became a wall remover in the central Queensland sheds. It was showtime in Augathella and Newsom was not content, till he grappled with a fella from the Jimmy Sharman tent. Nasty facial lacerations and deep scratches on his chest pointed to an altercation where he'd come off second best. Then a night of entertaining, a seductive local belle made it look like he'd be gaining a one-way ticket straight to hell. What could have been a perfect twosome looked like ending in despair, for right across the tracks lay Newsom and his belle lay by him there. Yes, he lay there at the mercy of a creeping Queensland train. The odds were that controversy wouldn't bother him again. Now it seemed that death was certain for this man who loved the pub, and his belle thought it was curtains, so she bolted through the scrub. But fate was favouring the shearer. His number wasn't in the cup. The train drew ominously nearer, and its bull bar picked him up. As it was dragging him, the clanging was heard above the woman's squeals. In front of the bull bar he was hanging, just inches from the gnashing wheels. When it stopped there was confusion. They all thought that he was dead. There were large cuts and large contusions on his arm and neck and head. But a wiry local drover, undaunted by the wild hoo-ha, casually sauntered over and released him from the bar. Then he walked back to the wagon and unhooked his water bags, poured the contents over Newsom and left him lying on his swag. You wouldn't think the scene could worsen, but bush blokes were tougher then, and up jumped Newsom cursing, put one on the drover's chin. It stirred the dust around the station. All the people were aghast, shocked to see a situation where a man might breathe his last. Now, it's not really my intention to separate facts from myth, and divine intervention I'm not too familiar with. But when the early morning sunrise made the magpie's serenade, Newsom was found lying crabwise at the siding in the shade. His eyes were bloodshot and bleary from the fights and too much booze. They threw him in the truck with Cleary to start tomorrow's shearing ewes. This happened way back in the 40s, maybe 48 or 9, when this shearer, hale and haughty, stalked the central Queensland line. Soon he swore off intoxication, insisting boozers were insane, cut down on his fornication and banned travelling by train. Now he's batting for the century, an esteemed and gifted poet, until they heard the yarn from me. Most people didn't know how this amicable fella, who was never one to brag, was carried into Augathella on a bull bar by his swag. The authenticity of this saga, well, there's few I can't convince, but he swore off all forms of lager, and he's never touched it since.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Col Newsom, was carried on a train. Wow, that's interesting. Whoop whoop. This is about whoop whoop, and it's sort of like it's for all those city people who don't know how great it is out here in the bush.
Yeah.
Whoop whoop. And this was written on the 11th January 2000. I read a phrase poetic in the Daily Telegraph. Had it not been so pathetic, it may have made me laugh. When I came upon the column of a journalistic wench, suddenly my mood turned solemn and my fists began to clench, for I thought it such a pity that this narrow-minded tart had the welfare of the city, not the whole country, at heart. She sang old Sydney's praises, and it almost blew my mind when she wrote that west of Windsor was whoop-whoop to her kind. Are journalists so narrow-minded in their ceaseless, senseless rush? Like politicians, are they blinded to the beauty of the bush, where the sun rises to meet you by the crystal waterfall, and the sweet sounds there to greet you of the bush bird's cheerful call? The arrogance of education ensures her kind keep talking down and creates a situation where the fools flock into town, where swarthy guards infest the airport, the working class are down the spout. If you can't see the harbour bridge, you're in whoop whoop camping out. Have you not lingered in a clearing by a fading firelight when the moon is disappearing through the gum trees gaunt and white? Watch the stars slowly diminish until there's only one. Then from the red horizon peeps the early morning sun. Have you listened to the carol of the magpie sweet and shrill on his black and white apparel over yonder vale and hill where the endless coastline glimmers over miles of emerald sea and the white sand fairly shimmers? That's where whoop whoop is, maybe. If she sought, she might discover in her ignorance profound that the chirrup of a plover is by far a sweeter sound than the rattle of the city with its rancid burning smell, where the homeless cringe for pity in their lonely desperate hell. You can have your city, lady, keep the harlots and the hoons, where the business deals are shady in sinful smoke-filled saloons. Keep the haggard haunted faces, the crime and iniquity. I'll stick to open spaces. Good old whoop whoop'll do me.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Alright, now I'm going to do a little bit of my poetry. And I'm going to start with, well, last week was the full moon. We had the full moon with the lunar eclipse. So that was the night I wrote this. The super full moon's about, beware the lunatic's brow. Tonight we've got a lunar eclipse. Tonight beware of lunatics. It's the night of the blood red moon. Beware tonight of the loony tune at the moon. The loon will howl tonight. Beware, the hens are foul. Raise your energy and don't yield to weird vibrations in the quantum field. Stay grounded and enjoy rebirth, or you'll start to believe in the flat earth. Tonight the super moon is out. Beware the lunatics about. The full moon isn't on everyone's lips, so please watch out for lunatics. Don't let loonies cause you grief with their irrational belief. They feed into the quantum field. Protect yourself and do not yield. The moon is hollow. Fancy that. The earth a sphere. Some say flat. The moon influences water, rain, and people's water in their brain. Keep calm, just sit and meditate. Don't let the moon make you irate. Enjoy the super full moon tonight. Enjoy the light and do not fight. As the super moon orbits above, vibrate high in bliss and love. It happens only once this year. Don't be a lunatic in fear. Okay. Now this one is called Heart Virtues. And well, a good friend of mine, Steve Wordsmith, writes a lot of poetry about love, but I think we sometimes need to define what is love and what are some of the virtues of love, like kindness. Kindness is one. So these are the heart virtues. They'll be appreciation, gratitude, forgiveness, humility, understanding and valour. Virtues of a loving heart is a place where we can start. Appreciation, acceptance and gratitude as part of a positive attitude. But let us not forget compassion for ourselves and others. Make it the fashion. Forgiving others feels great when we drop our anger and our hate. Let us not forget humility. Dropping ego makes a lot of sensibility, as does peace and also joy when our hearts are open. We employ Not be demanding and commanding, but listening and understanding. Takes valour and also courage. These are heart virtues I do encourage. To live from love we all can choose our daily practice of loving heart virtues. We don't have to live in fear, as we can all love all of the year. Then heart virtues will be traditional, love and forgiveness, unconditional, humility, compassion and appreciation, valour and understanding our situation.
Well, James, that's excellent.
All right. So this one is about futility, and it's a bit like the next one that I'm going to do after this, called Rock.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to call this Futility. Yelling at a deaf person or giving hand signals to the blind. Some things are pointless and a total waste of time. Persuading someone set in their ways who won't listen is like facing into a strong wind while you're pissing. There's no point in teaching someone who isn't ready. You can't give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to a teddy. The way winding back a clock doesn't change the time. People obsessed with their ideas have closed minds. No matter how hard you kick a cat, you can't make it bark. A shark out of water will become a dead shark. A bear wearing a tuxedo is never a bear, and although they may look similar, a rabbit is not a hare. A light in a dark room will always be a light, and if you want peace, you must turn and walk away from a fight.
James, that's excellent.
Thank you. And then I'm going to do, all right, no, we'll do two more. Mrs. Worry. There's Mrs. Worry and Mrs. Cool, because don't worry. No need to worry.
Right.
Worrying is a useless emotion, someone told me. Mrs. Worry was in a hurry and had a lot of stress. She worried about everything and if she was doing her best. She judged herself often and she often cried at night. Mrs. Worry was afraid and lived in fight or flight. Mrs. Worry met a man and his name was Mr. Cool, who knew he was not perfect. Mr. Cool was not a fool. He said to Mrs. Worry, we learn from our mistakes, not one human is perfect. Mr. Cool had what it takes. Mr. Cool had many risks, took many risks and had a wonderful time. Took off a bit of skin scootering, but he recovered fine. He swam with sharks in Scotland and came out alive. Mr. Cool's motto was, risk taken is a life where we thrive. Mr. Cool lived life, he loved and had no fear. Mrs. Worry died from cancer in her 56th year. Mr. Cool's attitude to life was one of love and thrival. Mrs. Worry lived in fear, fight or flight, survival. Mr. Cool was sometimes late and never in a hurry. He lived to 256, not like Mrs. Worry. He travelled around the world and experienced many things. Mrs. Worry was afraid of losing her gold rings. The moral of the story is take risks, but do not hurry. Live stress-free like Mr. Cool and not like Mrs. Worry. And that was inspired by last Sunday. I was listening to Macca in McNamara and Australia all over.
Yep.
And someone called in and he was talking about his mum, and his mum used to call herself Mrs. Worry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And I thought, I think I need to write about Mrs. Worry. So, last one I'm going to do was written in the middle of the night last night. I woke up and it was 12:34, and I had the first two lines in my head, and when I get two lines in my head,
Yes.
I know I've got to write them down.
Yes,
Yeah.
James, exactly.
All right. And this is called Yelling at a Rock.
Mm.
A rock has no ears and a rock can't climb. Screaming at a rock is a total waste of time. A rock has no arms and a rock doesn't aspire. Why tell a rock to lift itself higher? A rock is solid and has its own vibration. A rock isn't interested in new information. Yelling at a rock is weird and strange. There's no use trying to get a rock to change. A rock is a rock. If you want to change a rock, hit it with a pickaxe and give it a shock. But then you'll have a rock that is split. Two bits of rock come from one that's hit. A rock is solid and a rock is dense and sits on the ground or beside a fence. It doesn't know judgment. A rock can't change. Yelling at a rock, you appear strange.
Oh, James.
Oh. And there's one more I'm going to do, and it's called Forest Loneliness.
Yeah.
And this was written on my early morning walk. So I get up pretty early in the morning, and sometimes I go for a walk.
Yes.
Sometimes I do yoga and meditation, but this day I'd gone for a walk. I think it was around about 6 o'clock in the morning. It was really early, it was cold, my hands were freezing, and I was writing this on my phone as I went. And actually some of it I was like speaking to my phone and dictating it. Forest Loneliness, his name is. It's a man's name. He lived in the forest all by himself, surrounded by trees and very little else. In the morning he woke up and there was a breeze whistling through the trees and rustling their leaves. He would hold his own parties all alone. When he returned at night, there was nobody at home. An extroverted introvert and ambivert at best, deep in the forest, he was truly at rest. The cockatoos would screech as they'd fly by, wisps of clouds, a waning moon in the sky. In a small wooden cabin, he'd rest his head. He woke in the morning and rolled up his bed. On a wood fire, his breakfast was cooking. He bathed naked in a creek. Nobody was looking. He once was a CEO, but it caused him stress. Now he hugged trees, grass he'd caress. Named Forest Loneliness, who lived all alone. Trees, birds and animals surrounded his home. Walked away from the city when his house burnt down. Now Forest Loneliness never has a frown.
Oh, James, actually.
Oh, I like that one. Very happy how that one came in.
Mm.
So thank you for coming tonight.
No, James, no worries.
Thank you out there.
You're welcome.